back to the Film Appreciation Podcast. I'm your host Nick and I'm joined as always by Isaac and Marlon. How are we going today, boys?
Brilliant. Excited.
It's a very special episode today, guys, because we're joined by our first incredibly special guest, Critic Kebab.
The one and only.
Yes.
Thank you very much for having me, gentlemen. It's an honour and a privilege, so I'm looking forward to dissecting some movies and exploring each other's thoughts and feelings.
Yes, we got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about today.
Yeah.
So, is there anything, or do we want to just jump straight?
I think we just jump straight into it, yeah.
So, I'll introduce the first movie.
Easy.
So, Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.3, Marvel movie, of course. We're not strangers to the MCU. We've talked about them a lot in previous episodes, and probably all the time when talking about movies because it's such a gargantuan franchise. It is obviously directed by James Gunn. He got to round out his trilogy amid a bunch of controversial shit that happened to him.
Yeah.
Because it was like 2017 when he did the second one, so it's been like a massive.
The power of the fans brought him back.
Yeah, literally, because Kevin Feige is such a retard.
It actually wasn't Kevin Feige. It was actually what's the one of the executives at Disney that's under Bob Iger at the time. He was the one that made the call. I want to say his name was Alan Horn, but yeah, he was the one that made the decision. It wasn't Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige actually wanted to keep him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole state of the MCU in the last, probably since the pandemic started, has been a pretty big reverse in terms of quality.
Yeah.
It's kind of fallen off a cliff. Do we want to just quickly comment on what we think?
Well, I went into this movie having not seen Marvel movies in ages, and I remember I said to Caleb, because we watched it together, I was like, dude, I have no idea what's going to even happen. I don't even know where we're up to. Yeah. And even one of the characters, one of the characters, who's
Kraglin.
Yeah, I was like, why is he not blue anymore? Because I just thought he was Yondu. That's the point it's at now, where it's I don't even care enough about the characters to know who they are.
There's just also so many of them.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's hard to keep up. Yeah. Unless you're one of those super fans who actually really is watching every movie and thinking about it.
Well, we were speaking before, and there's so much saturation with the TV shows as well.
Fun.
Something's coming out every couple months now, and you can't keep up, and the quality is just so diminished.
I think what happened was after Avengers Endgame, because that was such a juggernaut of a success, they had all this good faith given to them by Disney, so that when Disney Plus itself came along, there was basically all credit was given to Kevin Feige and being like, hey man, just use this opportunity to explore any avenue from the comics that you want and create it into a show or a movie. And I think that lack of restraint and the amount of products that they're putting out just meant that Kevin Feige wasn't able to keep a close eye on each individual project and have the say, yes, that's a good decision, yes, we like that, no, let's rework that. Because when you've got 5 projects all in production at the same time, it's just physically impossible. So as a result, a lot of delegation and responsibility is put elsewhere, and I think a lot of the script writers got away with a lot of questionable things. And I say that with specific mention to She-Hulk, because that was a very dodgy show. But I think it's obvious across the board with Marvel Phase 4 especially.
Yeah. I mean, for as long as I can remember, I think it was the first Avengers movie that I saw in cinema. That was the first Marvel movie I watched, MCU movie. And I'd been such a diehard fan and watched it all and got to experience Infinity War and Endgame, which we're never going to get something like that again, clearly, because I think at this point, we've talked about this before in other episodes, that people don't seem to really give a shit about the MCU much anymore, because they spent so much time and took their time to invest us in basically Iron Man and Captain America. They're the 2 main characters, and now they're both gone and have been gone for several years now. And all these other new characters, no one gives a shit about Captain Marvel or any of these other characters.
But is that because it's at the point where it's people kind of sick of it, or is it because they've just set them up so poorly?
It's the quality. Yeah. If you set up She-Hulk and Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel, if you set these characters up in a really profound way that hooked an audience, then it would have been successful. You look at the Guardians of the Galaxy, the first movie, no one knew who they were, and even hardcore comics fans were being like, oh, they're really obscure characters for a movie. Like, I wonder what they're going to do with this. And now I think everyone knows who Groot is. I think everyone knows who Rocket Raccoon is. Like, if you ask someone on the street, they will be household names. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to quality and just hooking an audience.
And like you can clearly see, I mean, this Guardians of the Galaxy 3 has done really well at the box office. It did much better than what they're expecting. It kind of opened poorly, but because I read this shit because I'm a nerd, but it's like the box office hold for the second week was one of the strongest box office holds.
Word of mouth.
Yeah, and
people were like, it's actually a good movie, you should go check it out.
And that comment about people just not being interested anymore, like just look at No Way Home. Made almost $2 billion. That's like one of the highest grossing MCU movies ever, one of the highest grossing movies ever. And that just shows like it's interesting, and they actually, they're not thinking about anything else other than telling a good story and entertaining people. Then people will come.
Yeah. See, I think Guardians of the Galaxy is fortunate in the sense that it is a follow-on from two already established good films. A lot of the new Marvel content is new. There is nothing sort of preceding other than the comics, and that's in parts where they fall short. But Guardians of the Galaxy had Vol.3. It's such a strong foundation already, and I'm just happy it continued that.
Yeah, I think the Guardians of the Galaxy movies have been some of the stronger Marvel movies, so it's good to see that tradition has continued.
I'd say it's the strongest trilogy from Marvel for me. And I think the reason why is because Captain America is probably the other one that's the closest because there's so many good movies in that. But Guardians, for me, I feel is a bit smaller scale and it's more intimate, Like, they're the only Marvel movies where if you ask someone, did you cry in that, they'll probably say yes. Like, I can't deny I almost cried, or I may have done actually, in this one.
To be fair, that's what I was saying to Caleb. I was tearing up and that goes to show how well this movie is made because going into the movie, I couldn't care less about like any of the characters. It's just kind of like a movie. But then it got to the point where I'm like, damn, bro, this is actually sad.
I think the key ingredient that made this film so successful is James Gunn because he was the one that shepherded this cast of characters and this storyline from the beginning. And when you have someone who has a vision and an understanding of these characters very deeply, it just allows the audience to go on this journey and understand each step along the way, as opposed to when you have multiple filmmakers coming in, it gives you that sense of too many cooks in the kitchen. So with James Gunn having written and directed this one, he was able to just fully engross his point of view. And I think it was very obvious that he wanted to tell Rocket Raccoon's story in this one. And I think he did it in a very unique way because it was simultaneously expected and unexpected because he's always hinted at having a fucked up past, but the way it unfolded was like way more disturbing in the typical PG Marvel fashion. But it was, I thought it was very well done and it pushed the borders of what I thought his story was. So it was eye-opening.
He's easily one of my favorites, like from all the movies. And again, like in terms of my relationship with the Guardians movies, the first Guardians is my favorite MCU movie. I watched it a disturbing number of times when it came out, and like it's just so good. And I sat down watching this, and again, I kind of have the same thing. I remember watching what was that? The latest Ant-Man movie, which was just so bad.
Quantumania.
Yeah, it was just terrible. And I was sitting there like, fuck, I don't care about any of this shit. And it just ended, and I was like, fine, and I walked out. But when this started, I automatically felt more comfortable. And I think, as you said, with James Gunn being the key ingredient, his movies seem like they're the least interfered with. He's like the one who's been able to show his own voice the most. Like Ant-Man, I don't know who the director of that was, but clearly either he doesn't have much of a vision, or people are just fucking around with it, and it becomes sort of this jumbled mess of a movie. But I was very happy with this one.
I think one thing Guardians does really well is the humour. Like it is.
And the music.
Music's great. I think they missed some opportunities with the soundtrack though. But like as much as a sad origin story as this is, it is still hilarious. Not for the same reasons.
No, yeah, they do a good
There
job
are
at
moments
that
that are
balance.
just,
Yeah.
absolute laugh.
Well, I think the fact that the movie starts with Creep by Radiohead, so you just know that the movie's going to be sad. Like, it just sets the vibe.
And by the end of it, the song fits Rockets sort
Mm.
of things.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, interesting choice to start, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the comedy was woven into the film at all the right times. You know, you have moments of levity which you can then smash with a home run with a good joke, and then you have these sort of more somber, like serious moments that then sort of rejig your mind and get you back into the feel-good factor, and then you continue to the next scene. And I understand some people don't like it; they want to sit with the serious and the seriousness of the moment. But I feel like when you go to a Marvel movie, you expect entertainment, and that's what James Gunn delivered.
Go watch a different movie if that's what you want.
Well, I think that it does stick with the seriousness pretty well.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it can. Yeah.
It was like, as I said, I'm sure you all know, like, and everyone listening will know if you've seen the movie, but the scene where, like, Rocket's friends will die.
Yeah.
And he just screamed, and that was when I cried. I was like, that's so cooked. You know, it was such a raw thing. There was no music. He's just screaming. And then he starts, attacking that guy. And I thought
Fucks
that
him
was just
up,
such a
bro.
great scene. And again, also, it did not have a joke. It was just something
Yeah.
violent. It was like, oh my God.
He's just ripping his face off, just in like just pure
Yeah, and they're
rage.
showing up like close up so you can tell what's happening. And then they pull his like face off at the end. And I was kind of like, what?
Yeah.
That was
How are they
and-
going to show that in Marvel?
Yeah, that's a good question actually.
Pushing the boundaries.
What's the age rating for?
It's an M movie, yeah.
Is M?
So mature audiences, yeah.
Yeah, right.
See, one of the things I think they did really well was sort of the theme of animal cruelty.
Well, this is something I wanted to talk about with you guys, because there's a lot of layered themes that I think are really interesting when you dissect them, because a lot of Marvel movies you can just look at as very surface level, that was a fun flick.
Yeah.
But with this movie, there was a lot of things that were quite, intriguing, and the animal cruelty one was one of them,
My
So,
favourite themes. Just because, I walked into the cinema and knowing it was about Rocket's origin, but I did not expect to fully sort of come out of it changed in the sense of like some of the things that we do to animals, they're fucked up. And like it's
Well, yeah, because you look at them as like a lesser being.
Yeah, like particularly with the other creations that he's with, like Lila and the others. It's just heartbreaking, and the fact is, it's true. Like this happens all the time.
Well, I think as well, like the fact that you gave them the same level of sentience, obviously not as intelligent, but they're conscious beings.
Yeah.
That takes the question further of like you are doing all this terrible stuff to these animals. I mean, it's kind of similar to what we're doing, because if you look at it, a lot of the animals kind of are pretty highly conscious.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I mean, taking it a step further to have us look back on our level and be like, wow, how the fuck are we doing this to these animals?
Similar things.
But the thing as well is, I feel like you have this message and no one's going to really change their lifestyle.
yeah, but it doesn't...
At least it's something to
just
think
because
about.
It might not affect someone's daily life doesn't mean it doesn't force them to think about those sort of topics.
Which it absolutely did.
Because I think, that
It's
idea
starting
of
place, I guess.
the way humans treat animals, I think was a delicate balance that had to be like done really well. And I think James Gunn was able to maneuver really good. But I think what was most interesting, and I'm intrigued to hear you guys' thoughts about this, is that obviously the main villain of the film, his motivation is to create a perfect society.
Eugenics.
But not so much eugenics, that was a key ingredient, but it was more so about like creating a culture of people that thought all the same way. And if we cast our minds back, and Nick touched on this about the controversy with James Gunn, and James Gunn was originally removed from this film because a bunch of people dug up a tweet from about a decade ago, and in relation to it was a questionable joke, but a joke nonetheless about pedophilia, and James Gunn got cancelled for that. He got removed from the film. And I think when he was then got brought back onto the project and was doing his rewrites, I think one of the themes that he very subtly brought into this film was the idea of our desire to make society perfect consequently breeds problems within society. And the example I use is like social justice warriors, because they go out into the world and being like, that's an injustice, that's a terrible thing, racism, sexism, whatever. And then they go about trying to fix it. But by fixing it, they marginalize people who don't agree with them and try and shut down their point of view and aren't willing to engage in a debate. And I think the villain of this film kind of encapsulated a lot of those ideas, because when Rocket was smarter than him and voiced an opinion, he wanted to shut that down and understand, why are you better than me? And also, when he was creating a perfect society, I think it was on Earth-2 or whatever silly name they called it, when there was all those degenerates and criminals and the alien equivalent of drug dealers and stuff, he's just like, well, we'll start again, and basically just casting them aside. And that mentality of just, if we do not value someone because they're not on the same page as me, we just get rid of them. And I thought that was so subtle but so prominent in the way that James Gunn incorporated it.
The like he's kind of critiquing as well, because like when Rocket provides his opinion, it is showing how without other people's viewpoints, we can't actually reach those higher points where we want to reach. He wasn't able to solve the problem without Rocket coming in from a different point of view.
Exactly.
And it shows, like this modern movement where we're kind of almost regressing to a point where it's no one's allowed to speak unless it's like this hive mind.
An echo chamber. We hear ideas that reinforce your own beliefs.
And that doesn't push you to think something better. Like you could have a belief that maybe is correct, but there's some flaws within it, which the only way to get past those flaws is by hearing where the flaws are. So it's like, to live in this world where everything is the same and we're all perfect kind of doesn't really end up being perfect.
That point is actually so fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
I didn't think about it in that way. And I was actually going to say, one of my criticisms of the film was I didn't like the villain at all. I thought he didn't act very well.
He's a bit over,
And I will say as well, he screamed all of his lines, and I was like, I'm not buying into you as a villain. You aren't intimidating me in any way. I found him quite pathetic.
Yeah.
But upon you saying that, I feel like that's exactly what the point was.
Yeah, that's what I was saying to Caleb. That it was intentional.
Person just shouts down people who perhaps are giving that opposite opinion or whatever. And he actually is a fucking idiot. But he's just screaming I'm the best type thing. And I think that actually, now that you've made that point to me, I feel like that whole decision by Gunn, which I was going to say is a criticism, I thought it was kind of weakly written, because I didn't have a lot of depth. But I think there was, it lacked depth.
It's very subtle. And that was one of the things I noticed as well, because I thought the exact same thing as you. I thought there's a lot of overacting here. Yeah. But then towards the end, when I started to sort of piece that idea together and understand where James Gunn was coming from, I realized, okay, he's a caricature for that portion in the real world society. And I thought it was very, very well done. But in saying that though, yes, he's overacting, but I think it's deliberately so. Yeah. And that comes down to the directing, not necessarily the actor.
Yeah. And I guess you can sort of build on your point. In the main pyramid sort of building on Earth-2, when they get to that final confrontation and he sort of gets outdone by Star-Lord and who else was it? Groot. He sort of cowers straight away. You can sort of reflect that with the social justice where as soon as there is that immediate challenge, they sort of become a recluse. Which works well with your point.
And he says the problem with Earth, in his opinion, was like the problems with sort of, I think he said, I forget the exact word he used, but the problems with sort of capitalism and also bigotry. They were his two things. And I was like, now I'm thinking about if he's sort of some sort of representation for these SJW extremists online. Him saying that is literally what they are advocating for, that the problems with Earth are. I think that's just so interesting. That's such a great, I didn't think about that.
The next thing I want to talk about is, this is a an opinion that I don't think gets voiced enough from MCU fans.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Nebula. And I think she has had one of the most underrated story arcs in the MCU. If we remember where she was in one of your favorite MCU films, in the first one, she was the villain, the second in command to Ronan, and she was this very brooding, very harsh, very to herself villain that had a very stern and desire to be better than her sister, Gamora. And to see her then come into the second movie where she's not quite sure who she is anymore and is trying to figure out what her goal and what her mission is in life, and then to see that evolve again in both Infinity War and Endgame, and then obviously when Gamora dies in Infinity War, to then see Gamora become a certified good guy, join the Avengers, then join the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then to see her again in this third installment. And again, just sort of seeing her as a character that is willing to now sacrifice herself for the greater good, and also is willing to accept the people around her as family.
Yeah.
Whereas before she was so to herself and was unwilling to accept people into her life, especially her sister. And I just think her character arc across this franchise has been so underrated and not very well appreciated by a lot of fans, and I very much so enjoyed it. I understand a lot of the criticisms that people throw towards Nebula. It's a lot of shouting and screaming and overacting, but again, that's, I think, her character. You either like it or you don't. But in terms of storytelling, from where she was to where she ended up to being a certified hero within the Guardians of the Galaxy team, I really enjoyed that, and I wanted to give credit to Karen Gillan for pulling it off.
She ends the film with being the leader of Nowhere, and her dad was the leader of like the Dark Army, or whatever it is, Thanos' army. And so that's kind of interesting that she's also in a position now of leadership, but in a different way, and trying to do it better, I guess. And yeah, that's right, for sure.
Yeah.
You're certainly right, because Nebula isn't really a character I think that deeply about. You know, like, oh yeah, cool character. And it is obvious that she's grown, but she's sort of always on the side until in my opinion.
I think it's also interesting to see Gamora has gone sort of regressed in a way. Yeah. So I don't know what their plan is with what. I don't know what their plan is in future.
She said that she's not doing it again.
Oh, so that's probably why. So they're just trying to work her out of the story in a way.
Yeah, one of my biggest disappointments, because when they killed her in Infinity War, I was like, that was a very bold move that I think was integral to the story that was in that film. And then when they brought her back in Endgame, I was very bemused by that decision, because it was a multiverse version from 2014 when Endgame took place in 2023. So you have all that character progression that you had in those Guardians film you've removed, and then coming into this third one, because obviously she's a part of the marketing, which we all would have seen, and to be like, okay, so how are they going to rebuild this relationship within a 2-hour time frame between Peter and Gamora? And they just didn't at all. And at the start of the film, she's like, I don't even know you guys. I'm off with the Ravagers. And then at the end of the film, she's like, I don't even know you. I'm off with the Ravagers. It was completely useless.
It's more like, well, you guys exist, but, you know, I'm still off with you.
Yeah, but it was useless. Like, there was 0 points to that storyline being continued over.
She didn't need to. Yeah, no, definitely.
If you take Gamora out of that film, it changes nothing.
Definitely.
Nothing, literally.
That doesn't.
I feel like maybe they're trying to give what's his name, Peter,
a bit more resolution.
Yeah,
but don't you think the third film, for example, if Gamora died and stayed dead, the third movie is then about Peter's grief, because he's lost his mother,
I think that would have
he's
worked
lost his father, he's lost basically all the important people in his life, and then he's lost Gamora, who was the love of his life, and then this third movie,
He might be losing his best friend.
he could be losing his best friend, and you could have played with the idea of grief and how that changes a man, and the lengths people would go to overcome that adversity. But I feel like they tried to reintroduce a love plot, but then abandon it in order to concentrate on the rocket story, which was the smartest choice, but also
they tried to have like sort of a subplot with that love story going, which they also didn't even develop at the same time, so it kind of just ended up being a waste.
I was going to say that Another criticism I suppose I may have had was at the end. Although I hadn't rewatched the movies or something, and maybe if I had, I might have been emotionally wrapped up. I just kind of went and saw it, and I'd seen the other movies so many times when I was younger that they're just memory now. But at the end, when like everyone says their goodbyes and they kind of give the resolution for all the characters, I kind of felt like a lot of them they didn't mean much to me emotionally, and I don't think it hit me at all. And I was thinking, and I kind of thought that as a letdown, like I didn't really, other than Rocket. I think that's one problem with the film, is that they focus so much on Rocket and make him such a depth character. He gets so much time, so by the end you're so wrapped up.
Yeah, Rocket's your.
But everyone else, because they don't get not even close to the amount of time that Rocket gets, when it comes to the end of their stories as well, you're kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's done.
Like, all right, you have Star-Lord and whatever, and it's fine. Yeah. But Rocket's the only one where by the end you've felt all the emotion.
Yeah. No, I agree, definitely.
I feel like that's a struggle that the film had, is by focusing so much on one character, even though this is the last film, all the other ones are kind of on the side a little bit in terms of emotional sort of connection to the audience.
It's the most difficult thing when you have a movie that has a cast and list of characters that's this diverse.
Yeah.
It's just you can't have the real estate for that many character arcs. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. And whilst the ending was emotionally fulfilling for me, I think it could have been better.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
For sure.
See, I'm sort of happy with where most of them were left off. But
yeah, they all make sense for sure. They just don't hit you in sort of a strong way like Rocket may have done.
I think Rocket said, but also, and I don't remember his name, but you referred to earlier as Gondu.
The Yondu guy.
Yeah, Yondu. What's his name?
Kraglin.
I was really
Kraglin, bro.
I actually quite enjoyed that one.
I actually like that guy. He's a good character.
Like I left the film fulfilled for his character.
Yeah. Wait, Cosmo. When was Cosmo added into the?
He was in the first movie. You know.
Really?
Yeah. You know, in the collector's big room where the Infinity Stone was.
Yeah, you see it. Yeah.
He's an Easter egg in the background. And then he's not in the second one, I don't think. And then he was in Endgame, and then the first one.
The whole good dog thing was actually funny.
That was fun.
That was good. I enjoyed that.
I thought one of my other favourite parts in terms of the humour was the war pig. I thought that was just such a funny little character to add.
A lot of people criticise Adam Warlock in the film, and I'm not a comics fan, so I didn't feel disappointed by his character, but I actually quite liked his character in the
I think he's funny, but I will say, they set him up in one of the movies. There's this oh my god.
He was the post-credits.
Oh my god, it's Adam Warlock. He's coming. He's gonna fuck shit up.
6 years later.
Yeah, and then he comes in and it's like.
But that was
really?
the problem, though. Is that
really?
Taking the pig though, that was hilarious.
See, the pig is just a funny character to have. It looked so intimidating, and the way they set it up at the start, I was like, oh my god, this guy's gonna fuck shit up and just dies.
Yeah.
And in saying that though, I did think they missed an opportunity to use War Pigs by Black Sabbath in the introduction.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
They used a different song instead.
Yeah.
And War Pigs hasn't been used in Marvel yet.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. See, but I know Black Sabbath was used for Iron Man way back when.
Yeah.
But I think that was just a really good missed opportunity, considering how strong Guardians of the Galaxy is with the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And maybe it's too on the nose.
We've got to mention the No Sleep Till Brooklyn hallway fight scene with the Beastie Boys song. I mean, that song was so good, and that fight scene was so crazy and so impressive when you think about it, because you've got all the actors like Star-Lord or whoever, and they're actually there choreographed fighting.
Yeah.
And they have to do all the CG. They have to have Rocket.
Yeah.
So they have to mix live action and CGI action together, and I thought it looked fucking excellent.
Yeah.
I thought that scene was so cool.
It's a very tricky balance to make those things work.
You're like a Rocket running over on Gru's arm and shit.
Yeah.
And then jumping on people.
CG, but it's all one take. And then you turn around, and now you've got Drax or whoever who's actually there doing stuff. And I just imagine thinking of the blocking of that would be such a pain in the ass to be
It's so funny, because they're essentially fighting nothing. A lot of those people, they're just swinging at the air, really, and then they CGI over the top. Yeah,
that's pretty impressive. But wasn't that one of your criticisms, Caleb?
Well, yeah, I think so. It's one of those things that you see with a lot of Marvel movies these days, is that the action scenes are over reliant on CGI, but in this film, it's not noticeable in the sense that it detracts from the film. I actually quite enjoyed the action. But it's just because they're making so much, they just can't invest as much time and money into these productions to make them look as good.
It had some of the best MCU CG though recently.
I would probably agree with that.
So fucked. And
Yeah.
This was actually decent.
Yeah. The biggest problem that I have now with modern CG is I have now seen Avatar, the second movie, and the CGI in that is so incredible. So now, like, for example, I saw The Little Mermaid recently, and like that's another underwater movie, and it's just it's crazy to think that like that exists. The Way of Water exists, and then The Little Mermaid, and the quality of underwater CGI is just so different, and it's mind blowing.
Oh Jesus! Well, there is a big film coming up that has incredible
CG or visual effects.
visual effects in Oppenheimer.
Oh yeah.
Proper explosions.
Yeah, he actually detonated a small nuclear.
he actually dropped a nuke.
He did drop it. You know,
He went to Japan. He
He did. That's not a lie.
Oh, well, yeah.
It wasn't a nuke.
But imagine it was though. Imagine he got the clearance to
He
drop a
wasn't allowed to
nuke.
drop a bomb into the ocean.
Fucking man.
See, that's
Dude, Christopher Nolan, man.
To look forward to on a future podcast. But yeah,
Could you imagine he dropped it in like Chinese waters or something, and he just accidentally started a
I
war?
accidentally shot him North Korea. Whoops. Sorry guys.
Damn it.
Into the ocean.
We lined it up wrong.
The last thing I want to say about Guardians of the Galaxy 3 before we move on to the next film is one of the other themes that I thought was, again, quite subtle but very prominent in when you look beneath the surface is value people for their intentions, not their shortcomings.
Okay.
And I feel like with the Guardians of the Galaxy crew, there's a lot of characters that have flaws. You look at Drax, and he's a character that is very obviously stupid, but valuable in a lot of ways. And then you look
Best
at
monkey
Nebula.
impression.
Yeah. And then you look at Nebula, and she's very reserved and standoffish, but she still has a heart of gold at her center, despite her robotic nature. And then you look at Peter, who's a very broken and fractured person based off the losses that he's had in his life. And yet their intentions are often always good. They're always striving towards the right thing. And what makes that Guardians of the Galaxy crew that consists of all these wacky characters that are so visually appealing but also fun to watch is that they value each other. And they value their teamwork. And I think even though they all have shortcomings, them being able to be this family unit is A, inspiring, it's B, cool to watch in a heroic superhero team-up film, and C, I think it's a good message for people to take away.
Well, no, I have that written down similarly. Perfect imperfections.
Yeah.
And then embrace them like they did in this film. You know, there's so much growth in almost every character in 2 hours. Particularly Peter, and with Rocket's origin, they are all seriously flawed, and that's what makes them sort of unique and good. And and there isn't a person in this world that isn't flawed. So I guess everyone can relate to that, which is a really good thing, especially in a kids film. Or I say kids film, a Marvel film that targets
Has the
everybody.
audience. Yeah.
But kids can understand and relate to it.
Yeah, it is something that sort of needs to be not pushed, but needs to be
Understood in a way.
Yeah, because if
Out there.
people grow up hating and relenting their flaws, it
Yeah.
doesn't make anything
trying to
better.
impress it.
So it's a good message to have.
I think maybe a final thing I should touch on is the end credit scene. Just kind of why.
With Peter?
Yeah, I mean, like,
Oh,
do they? Is that what they? Is that we were talking about this? Is that just what they do now in Marvel movies? They just
Well, I think-
funny little. Oh, look at this.
Some of them have been.
Like, I mean, I don't have anything against it being funny, I guess, but it's also kind of just like, why do you have to put it at the end? Can't you do it like as a little, maybe 2 minutes after the credits?
I remember Deadpool did one where like you wait for all the time to do the credits, and then he comes out and he's like, why are you waiting?
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller
Go home,
yeah.
dumbass.
But the thing is, well, I think this is kind of funny. Is like Marvel had the effect of now a lot of people always just wait through the credits, and not for like the sake of like, oh, we'll sit through the credits just out of respect or something. People kind of just sit there waiting in case there might be a. It's kind of a. So it shows the influence of Marvel, how much it has affected the industry.
Yeah, and so many other movie companies do the same thing now. They include post-credit scenes. Yeah.
I make an effort to kind of search, is there a post-credit scene? Just so I'm not fucking wasting my time. But yeah. Anyway, should we give our ratings?
Yeah, rating time.
You can go first.
I'm an 8.
8
for this film.
Cool.
Yeah.
You go, Caleb.
Oh, I was gonna say I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I gave it a 7 as well.
Yeah, I think the more I think about it, the more it grows on me, and I think I'd probably give it an 8 as well. Yeah, I was thinking it started off because I've seen it twice actually. I was only going to watch it once, and I saw it a second time, and it was a lot better the second time, especially with pacing. And when I first saw it, I was like, it's probably like a 6, and then it was a 7, and I'm like, no, it's an 8. It just keeps growing on me. I really like.
Yeah, I was
fair.
half and the 4, so, but
But
you
yeah,
know, talking about it makes 8 sound.
Yeah,
fine.
8 out of 10. We need more superhero movies, please. Who wants to introduce the second film?
I'll do Infinity Pool. Oh, I guess that's the Infinity Pool's the next one.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, spoilers. Made by Cronenberg's son, Brandon Cronenberg.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's good to see that the horror tradition in the family is continuing.
Yeah.
I guess there's not really too much else to say if we just want to jump straight into it.
Well,
It's an interesting movie to say the least.
it's essentially for people who haven't seen it, which you really
Oh yeah,
should, 'cause
yeah,
you're not
definitely.
gonna-
I actually think it's a movie that has to be watched if
But
you want
although
to.
it's good, I went in. I didn't know anything about
I
it.
think that's the same as us.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about it as well. Isaac was like, you have to watch Infinity Pool for the podcast, and then he just put it on and I watched it. The way I would describe it to people who haven't seen it is it's a movie about a writer who had a failed book. He then goes on a retreat with his wife to gain inspiration, and then he goes on this journey that is so fucking weird and psychedelic and gruesome and unexpected, and the journey is so bizarre, and it's a movie that's not for everyone, but if you somehow understand what's going on, then I think you'll enjoy it. But for me personally, I was very befuddled, I don't think is the right word to use, but it was confusing for a lot of it.
Okay, I think an important thing as well, there's 2 versions of the movie. There's like the extended cut, which is what me and Marlon watched. I don't know, so the one that I put on for Caleb wasn't the extended cut. So
only really one scene.
Yeah, the main one the most obvious one is when he gets the hand job. Caleb was lucky enough to not have to see the penis getting.
I have to say, so I'm there.
It's fucked.
I'm there
It's
I'm there at like 9 o'clock at night.
What, you just mean the action of how it's done, or like?
No,
Just
so
see someone get a wrist.
but you see, right? You see his penis, like just not even like the whole penis. You just see the knob, and you know how he's coming. You see it like you see him coming, and it's like,
dude, you see it like splosh on the ground.
and the thing that makes it worse is it's not even just like it's like the way it's set up is a very like you're in a weird mood. So it's just like
To Guardians of the Galaxy.
you're like, what is happening there?
What's the theme with
And he just lets it happen. He's just like, ugh. Like, tell it off.
So this is the first note that I made when I was putting my review together for this film. Is Mia Goth, who plays that young blonde girl. I forget her name, the character's name. But Mia Goth, her performance is so seductive and so intimidating.
Yeah.
And I was
such a good actor, to be honest.
incredibly impressed by the way she was able to convey emotion just through her eyes.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't say a lot, especially towards the beginning of the film. She just makes these looks, she makes these glances, and she does like this sort of flirty like look up with the eyes, and it was so incredibly seductive.
At the same time,
and intimidating at the
I think
same
at the same
time.
time
It was
as well that
crazy.
she manages to have that sort of blank look when she's doing it too, which kind of, because when I was rewatching it with you, I was looking at it and you can kind of really feel that she is not the person you think she is.
Right, okay.
Because it's like the way she's looking is just so like there's something dead behind the eyes, but at the same time she manages to like reel you in. I mean, especially with James Foster, which by the way, James Foster is like the most perfect name for an author. To me, that just it sounded like a real author,
Nothing was better than you.
and he just seemed like an
You're
author.
sitting there, and I just love that scene when she was on the car.
Yeah,
The wine bottle?
Yeah, and she's screaming, James.
James.
I was like, oh.
Or when he's on the bus and she's like, Jamesy.
Yeah.
She
So creepy.
Mia Goth seriously has become like one of those actresses.
Yeah.
In terms of
I feel like she came out of nowhere too.
for modern horror, where I go, I can't wait to see like the next horror movie she does, because I don't know if you guys have watched X or Pearl, but both of those are so.
Yeah, I watched both. Yeah.
I've seen X, yeah.
I'm a huge fan of her horror.
What's that?
work.
Seen either.
Nah,
Yeah, they're really.
they're worth a watch. Yeah.
I tried watching X. I think I fell asleep, but
That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's such a good actress. And so is Alexander Skarsgård, who plays.
Well, actually, this is one thing I will say is that the acting for me at the very start of the movie is kind of weak. It gets really good at throughout, but they're very with his wife and him. There's just I don't know if it's the dialogue that's just written not very well, but it just seemed like I was watching and I'm like, yeah, these guys are acting. Mm-hmm. Like I could just feel like, oh yeah, they know the script. Good job, guys.
Well, I think the character development overall across the film is very surface level. Like they don't dive deep into the thoughts and feelings and try. The script doesn't allow you to gain a deep understanding of each character's perspective. So the wife has a very important role in the sense that she's there to be the distraction or the reminder of what his life used to be. And then when he gets caught up with Mia Goth's character, that's the life he's now transitioning into.
Yeah, he can't return.
Yeah. So I think they serve purposes for the plot, not for the characters themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of the idea. And this is another movie where I think you have to use a bit of psychoanalysis to make sense of it. I think you got to use Freud here. I think this is a very Freudian movie. Like you even have the Oedipal complex in here, and you can't say it isn't. He's like sucking her tit, and it's like very like a motherly kind of moment. But the whole idea, right? For me, this movie's like showing how these rich people, right? And because they have that no consequence, they're like super egos, so their law that's built into them has sort of shifted. It's kind of not the same as all of us normie people who have to live in normal society. Or maybe it's like their id, so their animal instinct, right, has just become so overpowered compared to their super ego that it doesn't even apply to them anymore. They just do whatever they want. And it's interesting as well because you see by the end of the movie, all these rich people just they're back to being normal. They go back to live their lives. Whereas James is sitting there in the storm. What the fuck? Well, okay, see, I don't know if he actually is still there because they shut down the place. Like he would not. I think it's like a mental representation. Like he hasn't left. He's always going to be a part of this place now.
Pretty sure it is at the end of the storm.
I will say, I know you said that the kind of surface level in terms of character, like getting you to care about the characters, and I think that's basically true for all horror movies because it's not the primary function of a horror movie. I would say there's very few where I can go, I would genuinely care about the characters. But the one twist of where Mia Goth, you kind of realise slowly she is like the villain.
Yeah.
Is when she said to him, and I didn't even clock this even after they revealed that she was the bad guy, but she said to him, like, I never even read your book.
Yes.
Shit. Yeah, I did actually go, oh.
The name.
Yeah, dude,
and she's like shitting on the name. The variable sheet. I at least thought she read the book, I was like, oh, she's fucking with him, but she read the book and she did like the book.
Dude,
No.
The way the film was shot as well, like that scene as well, was she's just in the background, he's walking in front of that car as it's moving behind him. It's just the way the shots are, like the composition of each shot conveys the dynamics of what's happening in the scene, and he is sort of on this road that he cannot escape, and something's coming up behind him and getting closer and closer. And there's multiple shots throughout the film where the sort of closeness of the characters, like there's a scene between Alexander Skarsgård and Mia Goth where they're having they're meeting up for a drink one night, and the way the shot is framed is they're on the right, so the character on the left is on the right of frame and the character on the left is on the right of frame, so they're really close to each other, if that makes sense. And then there's a lot of negative space on the outskirts, and it just creates that feeling of closeness and the intimacy. And it's just stuff like that is so easy to do, but it's just a testament to a clever cinematographer and director who's just utilizing efficiency to create visual storytelling.
That's what's good to see. I think obviously he's carrying the Cronenberg name, so I don't know if you've seen any Cronenberg movies, but
the original films made by his dad.
Oh, there's so many. They got The Fly, The Brood, Videodrome. What else? You might have seen The Brood because we did that for. Okay.
My favorite one that I don't know if any of you guys have seen is a movie called Eastern Promises, which is actually not. It's not like a horror psychedelic thing. It's Viggo Mortensen is a Russian mafia assassin.
Such a good actor.
Russian mafia assassin, and it was such a like brutal movie. It was so cool. Like that was. You should check that out. Eastern Promises. It was great.
On the sort of point of the technicalities of the film, I thought the lighting was just like really good. Like with the club scene at the start, I love shadow work, and I think in a horror specifically, the less of the sort of face of a character you show in establishing them works better, because then you get to I guess it's just the sort of mystery.
Yeah.
And it isn't sort of a mystery-based film. Actually, it kind of is.
Well, I think I like the fact that they don't go, this is how they scientifically make the double, because I don't give a shit.
No.
It's not the point.
It's
of
not
the
the
film.
point. The point is like, and you have these questions of like identity, right? Like there's this other person who is me, but are they me? Because like now I have the memory of them being murdered, and they don't. So who are they really executing me? You know what I mean? It's kind of.
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing to like ask those questions, I think, and therefore you don't need the scientific explanation.
I do really want to ask everyone kind of because the tagline for the film, like for the poster, is find out what kind of a creature you really are. And I wanted to ask everyone, disregard Bowie's psychoanalysis. What do we actually think the theme of the movie is? What's it trying to say? It's got a lot of stuff in there, but ultimately, if you say the core point it's trying to make, what do you think? Because I'm pretty...
Okay, I think even if you remove psychoanalysis, it's kind of the same point, right? It's like, well, it's sort of like when you don't have the pressures of society, and because you have all law, you can get away from law, right?
Yeah.
We live it.
Yeah, right. When you get rid of like law, which makes you act a certain way, right? Because you don't want to go to prison or you don't want to be executed in this case.
Yeah.
You know, what do you act like? Are you gonna be the same person when you can do whatever you want?
Yeah.
And I think that's the question.
I think I'm trying to remember, but the friend I saw it with, he made a really interesting point because he said that, and I kind of agree with this, that actually they're probably executing you.
Yeah, but then
they make the clone.
see, that's what I think.
And
I'll say
that as well.
Before you guys all comment.
Yeah.
He made this interesting point, which is that obviously as the film goes on, they all become more and more like degenerate.
Yeah.
And he was saying that because he thinks that they're killing the original clone,
It's
they're losing a piece of their soul,
yeah.
a piece of their humanity.
I think the other thing as well is they set that up, that kind of maybe that's what's happening when they do the scene where they go in to like the room where they wait, and that you think that's them, and then they do the whole scene of them being executed, like, oh fuck, they're finally putting a stop to it.
Yes.
But then you realize, because they show it around, they reveal that, oh no, they're still doing the double. So I think that finally puts that idea in your head, oh man, maybe they are actually executing the real people and just having these other doubles going around.
My thought, and it's pretty surface, and you've said it, is sort of the worse things you do, the further away from you become.
Yeah.
And look, I gave the analogy of a Horcrux.
Oh yeah.
Just because that's what I likened it to. And then
Harry Potter.
Yeah. So
That actually makes sense, yeah.
In the Harry Potter, it's the more times you kill someone, the more times your soul splits. But in this case, it's sort of the more things you do that put you in the position where you're going to be executed, and you fight over and over again, the less you become, in the sense that I guess you're sort of just you're removed from yourself over and over again until you're just a fragment, and it's almost just the physical that's left.
I also wonder, like, what they're trying to say in terms of, like, even masculinity, because she's obviously going, you're weak, show me how strong you are, and it's like, he's being violent, and that's sort of, the fact that he can beat up some guy who's literally blindfolded, how is that a show of strength?
But also the...
in a bag, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just like... And then it was him.
Yeah.
But it's saying what kind of creature are you, and then towards the end, sort of the big finish is...
He's a dog.
He's a dog, yeah. He's an animal, bro.
And I didn't understand... And I wasn't really sure, because I was kind of thinking, like... the whole losing pieces of your soul is definitely probably a thing, and I think that they are killing the original. But when I met his character, I didn't really see throughout the whole film like that he was a particularly bad person.
He just quite,
and that's why I was kind of confused about the whole dog thing. Because I was like, is he really? Like, what's wrong with him?
And the thing as well is, it's like he kind of doesn't have that in him, really. When you look at it, he's like a very kind of he self-doubts himself. Yeah, he's like, yeah, I don't know. It seems weird that he became a very animalistic, insane.
So he's sort of put in a position where.
But I wonder though if
Can't
it's
escape it.
yeah, if he's been forced into like becoming like that though. It's not like, I don't know. I feel like the group he's with kind of influences his future development. So it's kind of not really like going, oh, this is who you are on the inside. It's more like what we've turned you into.
Well, there's sort of like with his. There is the theme of sexual exploration and desire as well.
Yeah, desire.
So like, maybe he's fairly insecure, particularly as his novel and his lack. Well, he's got writer's block, so that's the reason he's on that. And I guess maybe with his insecurity, he just can't sort of, withhold the desire that Mia Goth sort of brings him. And you see in...
Well, because she's like, oh, I love your book. So it's like, wow.
So it's like, this is something he hasn't heard much of. So he can't sort of get away from that. And then it puts him into the position that she fucks him over with, like, drunk driving.
There's a key ingredient that we need to remember as well is the wife is also very wealthy.
Yeah.
And he is a failed writer who's not making a good income. And if we want to get into sort of a lot of dating dynamics and stuff, obviously, traditionally men are in that position where they are earning more money than the woman, and that gives them a sense of authority and power within the relationship. So when you reverse that, it does give a lot of men that emasculating feeling, and because they don't feel like they're enough and that they can offer anything of value within the relationship. And I think that's evident when he says to his wife, you can just go and I'll understand, like I'm not enough for you and I don't belong, I don't deserve to be with you anymore. Obviously we find out later that he had hidden his passport under the sink, but that's besides the point. But I think that is a key ingredient in what then leads him to exploring the lust and the desire that Mia Goth's character is offering to him. And then when he gets connected with the rest of the group, it is the temptation is a opportunity for them to take advantage of him and utilize him as a tool within their game and their schemes and their fucked up activities that they get up to. And he unfortunately is the victim in a very disturbing scenario, which makes you very uneasy as the viewer. And again, I think that's a testament to the director who's able to put you in this state of mind where you can sympathize, I should say, with the character and be like, wow, that's so messed up. And I understand how you got to this point, but you need to do something in order to get out of it. But each step that he goes on in this movie, he just keeps going down the rabbit hole further and further until you get to the end of the film where he's literally still out as the storm is coming and he can't escape it.
I sort of suppose if we do take the interpretation that he's getting, after the original execution is of him and he becomes a clone, that sort of, I guess, thought process of got to get out, even though it seems like he's trying, the more times he gets removed from himself, the less that becomes a priority. And he sort of just, like, and you said, well, is he actually really in the storm at the end? If he is, he's sort of just given up or has no sort of intent on leaving. But, you know, even with, like, the sex scenes, particularly the one with the strobe lighting, kind of fucked with my eyes.
How well made are those psychedelic? Those psychedelic scenes are so well made, though. Like,
sort of reminded me of.
I feel like when you, definitely. But I feel like when you watch, when you have to like pause and see what each thing is, because there's so much.
I think that they were actually having
like a full, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have been happening.
100%.
That was insanely weird,
though.
though.
As much as it gave me Gaspar Noé vibes, it also gave me ancient Greek statue vibes. Like the way the lighting was made, and because they're all in terms of physical, I guess, appearance, they're all relatively attractive people. I think that's one of my criticisms, is they're overly perfect looking, at least Alex and Mia.
Yeah.
Which I didn't like, you know. And like coming off the Northman, he's obviously in good shape.
Yeah.
Funny film.
Fucking shredded.
I have a friend that goes to the gym just to look like Alex from the Northland.
Hey, I get it. If I could look that way as well, I would.
But and like if it is an orgy, I think it ties in quite well with the ancient Greek sort of imagery that I think that sex scene gives. But even then, it was really uncomfortable watching that as well, because you just don't expect like a psychedelic sex scene in a horror film.
And I think this movie also uses nudity in a very important way, because in some films, nudity is used either as a joke or for shock value. And in this film, I feel like, it's used to be exploitative of the characters, but you seeing the nudity as the viewer makes you uncomfortable. Yeah. Like, you know that scene where they go to rob that guy and he's with, I don't know, an escort or someone.
I forgot about that scene.
But like, but that's a good, like, because they both come out naked, right? And you're just seeing these two people that are just being taken advantage of, and it makes you uncomfortable.
What's wrong with that?
So
in the mansion,
he needs a doctor. He needs to see a doctor. But yeah, I actually was struggling to look at that when I was watching like that scene. I actually like had to close my eyes. But I was like,
moments we just look at each other. Like,
but I think what we were trying to say there is like the nudity, because they say all the time, this was a criticism of Game of Thrones, was that the nudity in Game of Thrones was it was exploitative of the actors. It wasn't like necessary to the story.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
You know, like we're just getting this actress naked because we want to have nudity in the film for dudes who are watching it. But this movie, I think the nudity in it was all justified narratively.
I agree.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
No, definitely. What do we think actually? Because it's when he's first getting the double made, the very first one, and there's the psychedelic thing. But we see Mia Goth's character Gabby. She's dancing within like that psychedelic trip, and she's naked or whatever. What do we? Yeah, you think it's
That's
just
how I interpreted it.
It's just okay.
Because then later when he has a psychedelic trip, you see a couple shots of his wife, which is him being like, "Oh fuck, that's what I've left behind."
Yeah.
Is it a made-up drug?
No, probably.
I think so.
Because it's native to their made-up place.
Which is like.
I find it so funny. They're like
heavily influenced on like southern Baltic.
Yeah. But I also love how like they just grab the bowl and they just like.
Yeah.
And then they like and then it's like instant, bro. He's like how long does it take to boom?
Doesn't fit. But like that is one thing I liked, is sort of juxtaposition of the characters, the wealthy characters, and the country they're in. Like this.
But how nice is that country, dude?
Is so
Where is that?
up.
Where is it filmed? I feel like that'd be a good place to go on holiday.
It'd be southern, I think Croatia.
Yeah,
all the
I think
credits
it was filmed in Croatia.
All the
Oh, real?
credits are of like Croatian or
Yeah, actually, that's
or
true.
Southern European.
Yeah.
Last name style. But like, how fucked up is it that this resort has meter high meter high walls because the rest of the country is that sort of
It's so poor.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad, which brings like the theme of class system,
Yeah.
which is one of the two main themes in my opinion.
That's actually a really good point, and this just hit me. I had a light bulb moment. Because you got those rich, wealthy people who are taking advantage and having fun, and they're taking advantage of their situation, whilst the people around them are they're less fortunate, and them. I think it's a good commentary on. The wealth structure and how the people at the top can get away with doing obscene, crazy things, and the people beneath are just fighting for the scraps on the table.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. I could have articulated that better, but that was the way. Yeah.
Say as well.
Why do we think it was called Infinity Pool?
I was going to ask that too, and I don't really have an answer. But I think
she says that
they tell the story.
Her dad or whatever installed.
I think wasn't it? I think the Infinity Pool story was when they first did the double.
Yeah, but I know.
So I think maybe it's sort of represented. Oh, okay. Maybe it's something to do with like, I don't know. That's like the starting point of this ending series of like getting these people into this scenario. I don't know.
Sort of.
One of my favorite shots actually in the movie is like when they zoom in on the ocean, and then the ocean becomes like the whole screen. It just looks like static.
Yeah.
I love that shot, and then it cuts to like the next.
I thought it was super well edited.
Yeah.
Super well shot.
Well, even like the very start, right, when you have like the spin,
360.
right? That sort of sets up like this like vertigo feeling of of
And it
instability
would
within the
just-
characters,
And the
and
rotation
it just
of the camera,
sets it up so
The
well.
rotation of the camera would never be the full.
Yeah, it would.
Always like you'd almost get to the.
You would never get the satisfaction of it. Yeah.
Because you kind of go, oh.
You always want. It's like the CD going into the corner on the what do you call it, and it just never does.
Did anyone think much of the score?
I liked it. I actually was. I was actually when I was driving to work the other day. I was listening to it. I was
It
like
reminded me-
trying to get. Yeah, I was trying to get into like the because I was watching it. And I was like I didn't want to. I wasn't ready for work. I just wanted to keep watching the movie. So I was trying to stay in that vibe.
Just imagine being at my Croatian
Yeah.
hellhole.
It reminded me of Throne of Blood.
Boom, it's boom.
It reminded me of Throne of Blood in a very.
I don't even remember the Throne of Blood score.
Just a heavy drum.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, the Throne of Blood score is like very sort of mystic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought sort of.
Yeah, like just the
Watch that again.
boom.
That's such a good.
It is a good. The more I think about Throne of Blood, the more I like it.
Yeah.
So I do want to rewatch
Such a
it.
good movie.
I want to watch it. Is it Macbeth it's based off?
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't read any Shakespeare, so it's like
Yeah, we did. Did we?
no, because I didn't do it. Yeah, I didn't do it in grade
We did
10.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so boring.
But I've seen like so many Kurosawa, which is because a lot of those are just Shakespeare, but in a Japanese context. So it's kind of like
Ran is King.
Ran- yeah, King
Ran
Lear.
is one of the best movies.
I love Rand, dude. Legit, so good.
My favorite part of this whole film is the first interrogation scene after he was drink driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the extreme close up to the face.
Yes.
And shadows. That is arguably one of my favorite.
And as well, like the questioner is like, can you like say that you didn't rent the car? And he goes, yeah, and then it won't change anything for you. And then the thing is, he goes, you stole the car.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, obviously it ends up not meaning anything because of the double situation, but really, we don't know the double part yet. So for us, it's like,
Oh, that's fucked up.
well, he's just fucked him over.
Yeah.
Going into the movie not knowing anything, I thought was such a benefit.
Yes, definitely. I feel like so many movies are like that,
scene
though.
Of him hitting the guy. Again, I did create some sympathy for him because it was a mistake. His lights were fucked.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But
And then
he
as-
is drink driving.
Can I just say, this is a hot take right here, but that guy that got hit, fucking walking on the road.
See,
in the
this is
middle
why
of the
I didn't
night and
understand.
didn't see
But this is
or
what I
hear
didn't
the car
understand.
coming, he deserved to die.
Because Gabby Bauer's character and Gabby Bauer and Adrian,
Yeah.
right? They say like, oh, we didn't even have to get you into trouble. You just did it yourself. But to me, that seems so planted that a guy would just be there, and then the lights also happen to not work at the same time as the guy
Are
was.
you trying to insinuate that it was planned?
Well, to me, it just doesn't like they say. I know the characters say we didn't even have to, but I feel like they were lying to him to
No,
even
I
taunt him
disagree.
further.
I disagree.
I don't know, but like,
Regardless, they would have done something.
yeah. Well, but that's what I
I
think.
think they
though.
just took advantage of the situation.
But they were already going to do something to push him to that point. So to me, it kind of seems like they end up lying to him to push him even further. Like, wow, you're so useless. We didn't even have to make you a fucking gonna get executed. You did that yourself. Like, you are the worst person ever. You suck. And then that pushes him further. But I don't know. Like, I could.
You pointed the farmer being an idiot.
What if his farm was right there, bro?
The country's incredibly poor. What's the chance in the middle of the night there's going to be a...
Dude, what if his only? What if his only sheep?
Did you not hear? Did you not
Well, oi.
see the footage of the lights?
What if his one and only sheep? What if his one and only sheep, where all his income comes from, is running across the road and he's trying to get it?
Hey, all I'm saying is I had not a lot of sympathy for that guy because I was like, you fucking idiot, you should have heard that coming.
Oh, his kid just cold like.
Oh, what about the stare, like when he wakes up in the house?
Yeah, and he sees the kid. Yeah.
That was like...
So many of those scenes so good. I just think it builds tension so well.
Yeah.
And all those scenes of people, getting stabbed and whatever, I was just
stare
like,
from a citizen.
From a citizen, bro.
Yeah.
So maybe being a bit loud.
we recorded a public space, guys.
Yeah.
We don't have the capital to get it. We don't have the capital to get it.
Class system.
Fuck capitalism.
Anyway,
Give me a podcast room right now.
any final thoughts before we wrap up Infinity Pool?
No.
Um.
I'm good.
Yeah. No, I think we've covered it pretty well.
Sort of to sum it up is sort of, I guess, the areas that lacks are in the development of story, not the technicalities of filmmaking. It's in fact really strong in that sense.
Yeah.
But it's certainly something you should probably go watch.
For me, it's exactly what I like to see out of modern horror and horror movies in general. It's like it was a very original story. It was a good experience. It felt very unique, and yeah, it's what I like to see. I mean, I've watched so many horror movies and freaking just there's a ghost in the house, or there's a serial killer with a machete. Like who fucking cares? But it's like something like this, or Midsummer or anything.
Yeah, I really like the more psychological horrors. I love them because it's
psychological horrors, slow burn,
and because they stay with you after.
Yeah.
You watch like most horror movies, it's like jump scare, and you forget about it 2 seconds later.
Where they kind of, it always just felt like when you watch old horror movies that, except for a couple, horror's always made super cheap. It's kind of like it doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
And when you have a film, i.e. like Infinity Pool or whatever, where a decent amount of money's gone into it, and you can tell they've really taken their time with the artistry. It just makes it that much more of an impactful experience. And so like this kind of thing is exactly what I want in terms of going to see a horror movie. This is a movie that stays with you in terms of a horror movie. Watching a random Friday the 13th movie, you're going to forget.
See, I think like the first movie that really like that I had this sort of experience was like Under the Skin.
Yeah.
I feel like that was what really started the love for these sort of movies, because it's like one of those ones. It's kind of similar in that sense where it's like you're trying to go, wow, what is happening, but it also kind of makes sense, but doesn't.
One of the first films I watched after I signed up to Letterboxd.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's stuff like that, and I mean that's why you look back at a movie like The Shining. It's so iconic because Kubrick took such a long time. Like it's a long movie. He builds suspense. It's a very well-directed, well-made movie. There's no cheap bullshit scares about it. It is psychedelic. It's kind of like all psychological. And that's why it's such an iconic horror movie.
Yeah.
When you say to someone, name the most iconic horrors, they say that, or like Silence of the Lambs, or something like that. Something that it takes its time.
It's something, yeah.
And they devote just as much time as they would to any other genre. They treat it the same, like any other genre. And it's not like this, cheap blood, ghosts kind of crap that you see in 99% of most horror films.
Yeah.
Would you like to start with your rating?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
That's the same as me. I really enjoyed it. When I like watching it, like absolutely just enthralled by it. So
loved it.
8 out of 10 for me as well.
It's one of those movies where I feel like I'm in that in-between phase of thinking it was good and okay, because for me, whilst I think the technical aspects of it are really well done, I think the story, whilst it's intriguing, I think its uneven pacing and its long runtime detract from, or I should say strain your ability to get emotionally invested in some of the characters. So for me, I would say it's a 3.5 out of 10. 3.5 out of 5, 7 out of 10. So yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm really split between a 6 and a 7. And I'm probably going to watch this again, so I'll stick with the 6 for now. So 3 out of 5.
Yeah, 6 out of 10. Cool. Right, well, who wants to talk about the last one?
I think we should say that this is Nick's recommendation, but I think Marlon, you can begin it since you've got the last one.
Alrighty. Enemy by Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah, my pick for this episode.
Yeah. So obviously we've completed the cycle. Nick picked the first film.
Yeah, for the first episode, yeah.
Way back when.
Brazil,
It's
good,
like a classic.
great recommendation.
Yeah, so this is really
Another bizarre, and I think maybe it's a very early thing to say, but it's also another sort of double situation happening here.
Look,
could be the theme.
These sort of films where you're like actively made to think what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
You get so much more out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it definitely challenges you intellectually, and a lot of these artistic-driven films do that, and it's fun to dissect and look beneath the surface.
That's why I love these movies, because it's like they stay with you, and it's like.
But I would say it's like different to something like Infinity Pool, where Infinity Pool is just, it doesn't explain itself. But this one it's symbolic.
Yeah.
It's symbolism. That's what it utilizes. Whereas Infinity Pool is just, there's just stuff.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't think it's explicitly symbolic, but like in this one, spiders and everything is all very.
Yeah, I mean, it's very obviously.
I only watched. How do we feel about it?
Before we dive into our thoughts, do you want to just sort of do like a recap of what the film is?
I have the shocking memory.
Nick.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's about you have this college professor played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and he's like watching a movie at night, as we all do.
Oh, because he's depressed as fuck.
Depressed as fuck.
Needs something to brighten his
What are you
mood.
trying to say?
And so he's like sitting there, and he watches the movie, and he sees a background extra that looks exactly like him, and it kind of starts this obsession for him where he tries to find this double, this like identical twin, if you will, although obviously not related, but he looks exactly the same. So you get two Jake Gyllenhaals in this movie, and
So yeah, one is the struggling history professor. I can't remember his name.
The other is an aspiring actor.
And the other one is an aspiring actor and who has a nice apartment.
Adam is the
And a pregnant wife.
And a pregnant wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to say that like they both sort of have lives that mirror each other.
Yeah.
Like their partners are quite similar in terms of like the way they look and yeah. But
the blonde.
I don't know even where to start. Where do you want to start with?
I know where to start. I was initially very confused by this directorial choice, but Denis Villeneuve decided to make a lot of the film extremely dark.
Yeah.
The lighting is so dim. But I understand it's purposeful, but like from a viewing perspective, when
You can't see
looking at the
shit.
screen and 80% of it is literally black, it's like, for me, like, I understand it's deliberate, but for me, I think that's poor filmmaking in a way.
Well,
Because you're not showing the viewer anything, you're just creating darkness to create a mood, and that only does so much for you in the long run for a 2-hour film.
Well, see, sort of straight away, it was the strip club, right, or the underground sort of rock.
Yeah, what the fuck was that? That was a weird.
As soon
That's
as
a
I
weird thing.
clocked that like the audio was taking over and the visuals were sort of receding, I put my headphones on, and they're pretty good headphones. And just the sound throughout the whole film with them on was amazing. So as much as maybe the lighting and I guess what's on the screen is minimal, I think it makes up for it in the audio. But I do agree with your point that a film is a film because we're watching a screen. We want to listen to audio.
It's a moving painting with sound.
Yeah, the cerebral aspect of it I think is unique, but for me, like, there's times and a place where you want to create limited visuals on screen in order to accomplish certain effects. But in this film, just shots in Adam's apartment, it's just so dark, and he's just walking around. And I understand the darkness is sort of to create this deep sorrow and all that kind of stuff, and showcase what he's feeling. But at the same time, when you're like having to literally move your head closer to the screen and be like, I can't fucking see anything, like that to me is jarring, and it takes you out of the film as opposed to being like, oh, what's happening? You know what I mean?
Do you watch your films on a TV or a laptop?
Mostly TV. I very rarely watch a lot of movies on a laptop.
Yeah. Because it sort of varies, like as in the lighting.
Yeah.
If the screen's...
I suppose the venue or the screen that you watch it on would play a factor, but I don't think my TV had an impact on the movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's essentially only one question when it comes to this movie: is what the fuck?
Yeah, what the fuck? Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck? Question mark, question mark,
What the
question mark.
fuck?
What
And
the
it's like,
fuck?
I feel like,
What was that?
see, I wonder how many ways you can go with analyzing the movie, because I feel like it really, I think it really depends, like, sort of which key you pick to open the door.
You've already heard some interpretations.
Yeah.
Can we hear them then? Because
Well, okay, I want to say what I sort of think first.
Okay.
With the spider, I think it's sort of some sort of comment on like relationships, right? And being, what's the word? I don't know. Yeah, well, because you see like the actor, he's cheated on his wife, and he's cheating, and he cheats at the end. Yeah, and I think the spider almost like represents like both the stability of a relationship, and then also like the fear of losing that stability in the same sense, but also kind of wanting to lose it. It's a weird setup there, and I think as well, because for me, there's obviously those lectures, and I think those lectures are where you kind of have. Well, we have to. I think you have to start there with what the movie means, because there's no reason to have those otherwise. And he mentions Hegel, and that's the one I know mostly. So Hegel is obviously a philosopher, but he's also. He has and they mention the idea of like history being like a repeating thing of like where you have development, like a rational development. But then Hegel has an idea of the master-slave dialectic, which is basically like you have these two consciousnesses in the world, right? And they come across each other, they meet, and you basically have this fight in a sense I'll say to the death, but it's not really to the death. It's more like who is the master and who is the slave, and who is the consciousness who is sort of transcendent and and the world is centered around him in a way.
I guess that sort of plays.
But and then that's what I mean, right? The movie works. The movie works in that way where you have them sort of competing in a sense for who is the dominant consciousness.
Are you fucking my wife?
But the only thing is, I don't know how then that fits within my idea of what the spider means of relationships.
The movie starts by saying chaos is order yet undeciphered.
Yeah.
That's what it starts with.
Yeah.
In terms of the theories I've heard, so I have this movie I've wanted to watch for years, and there's this YouTuber I like called Chris.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of him.
He's the OG movie critic.
He probably is. And
Really?
He for sure contributed to my love of movies, because I got into movies when I was in middle school. It's because I discovered his channel and watched his videos, and I actually bought and read his book, which is the Film Buff's Bucket List, which was 50 movies from 2000 to 2015 that are really good and that you should watch. And at the time, I only watched Marvel or Star Wars.
Yeah.
And so reading that book and discovering a bunch of new movies, and I was watching them with my family, and it was really cool to discover different stuff. And Enemy was one of the films that he put on the list. And so when I watched it finally years later, only a couple of weeks ago, I looked up his channel, and he had his explanation of Enemy. And his thing, and of course there's tons of things to explain, but I'll start with the spiders.
Yeah.
His explanation was he thought spiders were women. That was
that
was his explanation.
I think that because she turns into a spider, so that was what I was leaning to as well.
He says the spider. The
Yeah.
reason he says this is ultimately the movie, and Denis, because he showed video interview evidence to back up his stuff, and Denis Villeneuve essentially said that the movie is about Jake Gyllenhaal's subconscious. That's what he said the movie is about.
Yeah.
And so the reason Chris thinks it's women, and I quite like this theory, although there's another one that I think is just as valid, is the two characters that he plays are actually the same person. It's the same person, and it's his conflicting what he wants to do. He's got the cheater, douchebag Jake, and there's the history professor, nice Jake. Yeah. And the reason that spiders or whatever exist is because he fears being trapped in the web of commitment.
Yeah.
And that's what women are.
I think maybe that works better actually, the spiders, because even you see in that scene of the club of whatever it is, they crush the spider, so that's crushing that commitment.
It crushes the commitment to his wife or whatever, because he's at the club at that point. And an interesting thing is you can tell that the Jake at the start is the one who's married, is because he's got a ring on.
Yeah.
The first couple of scenes are of the actor.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
I only clocked that about halfway through. I was like, oh.
But there are certain points, especially, we can talk about the spider at the end, but when actor Jake crashes, there's a spider web in the glass. Yeah. And that's he's choosing commitment, right? And so, and you see he's in the web now of commitment when actor Jake dies. And then at the end, he opens up the envelope, it's got the key, which is the key to the nightclub or whatever. And he's thinking, I'm going to go out tonight, which is kind of him insinuating, I'm probably going to go cheat on my wife. And then she's a spider. I think all of that, to me, made quite a lot of sense. Another one is that, this is more simple, is that spiders are guilt.
Yeah.
He feels guilty about what he's doing, and so there's that one shot which I thought was insane of the spider walking through the city, that massive spider.
Yeah.
And people it's guilt kind of following him
around.
But the last thing.
But I think that also works as his commitment following him.
Yeah, exactly. And the last thing I'll say before you guys will jump in is that a big thing that Chris says, and I actually agree with this, is that the first scene of him at the club is actually the end of the movie. So he says he's going to the club, and then he's at the club. And the reason why it works is because at the end of the movie, he missed a call from his mum, and at the start of the movie,
and then it's a cyclical.
It's his voicemail from his mum.
Yeah.
And then that comes back
Yeah.
to the Hegel lecture
Yeah.
about history being.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
See,
See that actually that's a very good interpretation.
One of the things I read was that the story is sort of non-linear. But
Definitely.
mainly in the act.
What do you think though when there's that other man who asks to like go back to the
in the lift?
yeah.
Well,
What?
it's probably just some guy that he knows from like.
So yeah, but if
I think
it represents his subconscious though, what does that have to?
Well, I mean, it's just because like if you're in your subconscious, you would have a bunch of shit.
I guess,
bouncing
yeah.
around, you know.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
I don't know. I quite like Chris's interpretation.
Yeah,
I think that works very well.
It's certainly one person. We can all agree on that. Right.
Yeah.
It's two.
I just movies like this are so deliberately abstract that you have to really make these leaps and bounds in order to make any sense of it. Like when you say women represents when the spiders represent women or the spiders represent guilt, how does the physical animal of a spider come to those things? Like how does it relate?
The question is why the spider? Well, I think
why a spider? Like why could
Well,
it
I think
not have
the-
been something else?
it being
It's
commitment
just
is like
to
the
me,
web
like,
of it.
when you say women or say guilt, that makes sense to me. But why specifically a spider? That's what I have my question for.
At least in the spiders, in representing women, which is the theory that I like the most, the interpretation I like the most, is that the predominant, most spiders, the majority of them,
yeah.
the females eat the male.
And also as well, the female spider is always the larger.
Always the larger.
And actually,
the female spider is always bigger than males, and they eat the male 99% of the time after mating. They'll kill
Yeah,
and eat.
and I mean the other thing as well.
Interesting.
It is
okay.
Yeah, so out of like, obviously it can symbolize heaps of things, but I've just searched up spider symbolism, and one of the first things that comes up is feminine power.
Yeah.
So I think
Ah,
They're
see,
one of the only animals
That's
in the
good now.
ecosystem that
Okay.
do that.
them and like then hyenas are like a matriarchy as well. So it's like
because you know basically
There's not that many, interestingly.
including human beings on a general basis, you know, the male is bigger than the female.
that's funny.
In spiders, it's the opposite.
Yeah, that's funny. You just saw me figure that out in real time. Then that was good. Okay, no, I like that.
yeah. No, so I think that interpretation to me is pretty good. Like I feel like it explains it very well.
But it's all justified because Denis Villeneuve said unequivocally the movie is just about Jake Gyllenhaal's subconscious.
I'm glad
Because of that, you know it's one person, which is why you can then break it up and start interpreting that.
Yeah.
I like when filmmakers come out after the fact and can give a bone to the audience, because some, you know, especially directors and stuff, they'll make a movie and it'll be so abstract or so confusing, it'll end
David
on a
Lynch.
cliffhanger, and then they'll just be like,
Yeah, see, that's David
you guys
Lynch.
think it-
David
figure it
Lynch
out.
will be like,
and I like when Denis Villeneuve comes out and says, I think it's about this, and then you, the audience, can figure out each step after that. So I appreciate that.
it's actually one of my favorite clips is, I can't remember what movie it is, but they asked David Lynch a question about like, oh, what does this thing in the movie mean? He's just like, no, I'm not telling you what it means. No.
Yeah, I don't know that.
But well, someone says to him like, "Oh, has anyone ever guessed the meaning of a razor head?" And he's like, "No,"
No.
which I don't believe. I don't believe that. I reckon
So many people have seen it.
Yeah.
There's got to be one that's
There's been
near.
thousands of
Yeah.
videos, you know, there's no way no one would have got it. But yeah, like, and I agree with you. He didn't explain the whole movie. He just said, "This is more or less."
He gave you the key. I think that's,
He gave
and that's what I was.
to interpretation.
Because if you take a different key, you open a different door, and the movie is it's completely different in terms of its meaning. I think that's sort of how this movie's work. Like wherever you go to the movie and you pick that out to reveal what the rest of the movie means, you're going to get a different answer.
It's still going to be valid.
It's a bit like maths, really. You know, depending which formula you use, you might get a completely different answer, but it's still kind of correct.
If you want, you can just ignore. If you get rid of the spider symbol and ignore it, you can just take it as it's presented, that it is just a thriller about two people,
Yeah.
and then he dies at the
Which
end.
still makes for a fairly drama film.
Yeah, you can just think of it like that. It's just two people. It's a thriller. You know, they have this antagonistic relationship. One dies, and then the guy takes his place.
I
And
found
you can just get rid of the spiders. That's it.
I found the slow burn worked really well.
The other thing as well.
I thought it was super entertaining.
short.
The other thing as well is there's a massive tension between the two characters. Well, I guess the one character.
It's
Yeah.
super cool that they could do that. Like, I know it's done in lots of movies before.
Yeah.
But it was pretty seamless. The
Oh, absolutely.
That's down to a good.
even do that? They just what? Like have the two.
I think it's they layer the shots or something. I don't know how it works.
I'm not sure what we're referring to, but I was just going to say with regards to like how layered it is and stuff, I think that's down to a good screenwriter and a good editor who's able to structure the story, and each scene builds on each other, and you gain more information, and you keep leveling up, and then you get to a peak in tension, and then the information is revealed, and then you as the viewer can be like, oh, wow. And I think that's what makes this movie stand out for being an okay film to a good film.
I agree, and I would say it's interesting we mentioned Eraserhead because I think it's actually very similar in a lot of ways. Not in a story sense, but like they're both about 80 minutes. They are also both super, super slow.
Yeah.
And don't have much dialogue yet. I find both of them super entertaining. I found Enemy so entertaining, like that. Ditto with Eraserhead. Like Eraserhead goes by like that. And I'll definitely watch
Eraserhead's a wild watch.
I'll definitely be watching Enemy again for sure.
I sort of knowing how I feel about an interpretation, I do want to watch it again, looking at that from the start.
Yeah.
See what more I pick up on.
I think a rewatch is definitely necessary for this film.
Yeah.
For me, this was one of those abstract films where by the end of it, I was so confused by it that I didn't know what to think, and I didn't know how to feel. Like I know initially I was like, what the fuck? This made no sense.
Yeah.
But then when you start to understand the symbolism of the spiders and stuff, I can the cogs in my head are starting to turn. So for me,
I think that was like when after the movie, you and I were just trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
We're just saying anything that might work.
When Chris Stuckman made his video, it was 3 months after he'd seen it, and he watched it 6 times before he made it. He made the video because he would literally, he told, like in the video explains, like especially all of to try and pick up every idea before he was fully confident on his theory. He would take those like lecture scenes because he thought those were super crucial.
Yeah.
And I can't even explain those yet. Like I'd have to watch it again, but he literally looked up every line. What does that mean in relation to thing, and formed the whole theory. So
Well,
Isn't it just like that's movies like that are just so good?
Yeah, a question I want to ask quickly is right after the car crash, they showed they pan to the skyline again, like the long shot of the skyline, same sky in the background, same building essentially, but the spider's gone.
Yeah.
Anyone have any thoughts on that? So like as soon as
it's because the spider isn't following him anymore. Because they showed he's in the web now.
Yeah, so he's in
the spider is there.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to, So when it shows the web,
it's caught up to it. Essentially.
Yeah, it's caught up to him. You don't even see the spider because you've seen the web. He's in the web.
He's in.
The spider's obviously gonna be there.
Yeah, that
and
makes sense.
And then when he is like, "Fuck this, I'm gonna go to the club" or whatever. That's why you see her as a spider again.
Yeah.
Which I thought that ending was so that jump scared me so hard.
Oh no,
it showed the spider. I went, "Fuck!"
Yeah.
But see, this is such a good example of the jump scare being utilized properly. So many fucking horror movies just use it like 10, 15 times in a row. Yeah. And it's almost like part of the rhythm of the film, and it's used as a cheap thrill.
You know when it's coming, and it doesn't work anymore.
Utilized the jump scare perfectly. So thank you, Denis Villeneuve.
And they only did it once, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, fuck!
Yeah.
Because imagine, and then on a
Could you imagine you saw a giant
you
spider?
walk into a room for a huge spider and you go, fuck me, what's
the spider?
Dude, that'd be the worst thing ever.
I was like, oh.
And imagine if you're one of those people that's actually legit, like terrified.
You just
You
just faint, bro.
Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Did you think the lighting was saturated?
Yeah, it was kind of like
yellow.
Yeah.
they had it like
I think I even said this to you whilst we were watching it, right? Adam's apartment is like really...
they have different colours
really
for different
yellow and really, what's the word?
drowned out.
Drowned out.
Yeah.
And then you go to...
he's got like 2 names, so Anthony.
Yeah, then you go to the actor's...
I don't know which one it is.
Anthony's
his fancy high-rise apartment, and it's very blue and very
it's like bright,
very open and very bright. And again, it's reflective of their personalities. He's very upbeat, outgoing versus
this guy's depressed as fuck.
Yeah. So the lighting, yes, you bang on there.
I did like the yellow lighting.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was good as well.
You don't really see a film where, and I think it was probably saturated, because where it wasn't yellow, it was black.
I do agree. Like, although it was probably like on purpose, artistic choice, it is a pain in the ass if they desaturate the whole thing or whatever, or take the color out. And I'm kind of like, because I was in my room. It was like middle of the night. Curtains pulled, all the lights are off. It could not be more dark in that room, and I was still at full brightness on my computer, and I was still kind of like,
Oh, see, I didn't have that problem though. I really just didn't. I enjoyed the black.
No, but I mean, on a...
It's still
it's
like...
not, it's not a major deterrent. It's not like,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
movie's fucking shit because it's got this problem. But it is a problem, like, for me. I go, guys...
It's jarring, and you never want to be jarred in a
No.
movie
Like,
because then you suck out the immersion.
There's nothing wrong with the movie being dark, but it needs to be able to...
But
It's okay. I've got the perfect example. Comparison actually. Tenet, right? I'm sure you guys have seen it. How the dialogue is really muffled and the audio mixing is quite
So
bad.
shit. That's actually like the worst thing
Nolan
ever.
comes out and is like, oh, we intended it to be that way. Yeah, but no one can fucking hear what they're saying.
They're, like, explaining the
so
whole movie.
it doesn't matter what the artistic
hear
purpose of it is. If the audience can't hear the dialogue properly, it jars them and it takes them out of it, and it's not what you want.
And sometimes that might work though, where like they're speaking and you just play like a noise over it and you can't hear them, and that makes sense. But like in the case of like Tenet, you can't hear them and they're explaining a very important detail of the movie, and you're like, well, I guess I'm fucked now.
Yeah.
Don't know what the movie means.
I guess.
But like, yeah. And this as well, it's like it can be dark,
I guess.
and it makes sense for it to be dark.
Yeah.
But there's a point where it's like, why is it so dark now that I can't even really understand
Yeah,
the
see-
frame?
So I guess the point I'm trying to make this is it actually just didn't bother me. Like I just.
Oh, right, yeah, fair.
I'm not bothered by it. Doesn't affect me either way. The one thing that did bother me was the wife. I just don't like her as an actor. I don't know why.
She's the pregnant one was the wife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Maybe that's probably intentional. Because that's the whole point is he's trying
She was kind of like, no, but she's emotional because she's pregnant.
I know, but I just
Oh, the
don't like
acting.
the actor for some reason. And that
Bad acting or
No, not even that. It just some reason. I've
she's
seen
pissed her off?
somewhere and I
I've
just
never
don't
seen her
like
before.
And it really got on my fucking skin.
Who's the actor of the girlfriend? Because she's been in something else.
It's Melanie Laurent, who was in Inglourious Basterds.
Ah, yeah,
She
that's
played
it.
Shoshana.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Shoshana.
a military scene, right? She's under the.
Yeah,
She's the one who's.
Oh, she's
she's
the
running away and he comes out. He goes,
Yeah.
the wife's in Spider-Man 2
She really? What character she play?
as
Amazing
Carrie.
Spider-Man 2.
Oh yeah, the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
And then everything else I have no idea.
I really like the strings.
Strings.
The strings, as in the score.
Of score.
The
right.
strings.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
sort of. It's quite stripped back, and it was like just. It was like sort of. You know when they like hit a violin instead or pluck it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that, like the sort of high, short. Yes. Sounds.
Yeah.
But then at the end, the swell of a proper orchestra. Or I guess part where it's just the violins. I really like that, but I don't know. It's just too many questions to sort of, give. You right there?
Sorry.
Are you alright?
Oh, you know.
Okay, that's good.
I've been trying to knock off this whole
Yeah.
hour.
It's just something that I really want to rewatch.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think it is definitely a movie that needs to be rewatched, and I think it's the one that I actually do want to rewatch. There's some movies where it's like I feel like I need to rewatch, but I just don't want to.
So do you guys have ratings for this film already, or is this one that you'd have to watch again and then solidify an opinion?
I have like
We have to give it a rating,
Yeah.
but this
At
is
least
so subject.
At least a preliminary one, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, do you think it would change up or down upon more viewings?
I do think it would change up.
Or up, okay.
Up, I'm thinking. Now that I have sort of base.
I think mine might. I don't know. I think mine might stay the same. I don't know.
But yeah, see, like one of the first ones we did after Sun, I watched it. I gave it an 8, which was higher than these two already. Then watched it again, gave it a 9. So these things aren't set in stone, and the beauty of this film is it's so short. Because it's almost makes it convenient.
That's what makes a Razorhead so good.
Yeah.
It's like oh, I want to watch the Razorhead again. It's fine because it's 80 minutes, not fucking 3 hours.
For a film as confusing as this, the fact that it is short gives viewers the opportunity to rewatch it, which is something I like.
I think that's actually
Might be
the important
intentional.
thing, is like I've been wanting to watch David Lynch's Inland Empire.
It's so
But
long.
It's 3 hours long, and it's like art house as fuck, and I'm like, oh.
You got to be in a perfect mood.
Mate,
But it's like, and it-
wait till you watch Twin Peaks season 3 though.
Even if it's artsy fartsy and shit, like if it's really quick, you can just watch it because you're like, oh, it's an hour.
Yeah.
No problem, done.
Yeah. Well, that's the sort of thing. That's why a lot of people watch bang average like romance comedy.
Because they're short and you don't have to think.
They
Horror.
They give you the fulfillment that you are looking for in a shorter period of time. And it's a lot easier to get into a mindset to watch something like that.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing in watching a film, especially for a podcast where you have to analyze it.
Yeah.
In different ways, I would actually say that all 3 films we've talked about today, I would rewatch or like to rewatch for different reasons.
For different reasons.
You know,
I think
things you can put on for fun, and I do think like it is a fun movie. You know, it's got some sad bits, but Infinity Pool and
Enemy. I think they're both kind of the same thing. Trying to figure it out. Yeah. See things that you wouldn't have seen before.
The more you're gonna sort of
Piece together an idea. Yeah. Because that's the thing. I feel like a lot of people just they watch a movie once and go, yeah. Either they go, yeah, I got it. Psh, I know exactly what it is, or they just go, means nothing. It's just full of shit.
Well, that's why
Dumb movie.
I honestly feel like the majority of like general audience people who watched Enemy, whatever, must have just taken the interpretation that it's like 2 people.
Yeah.
It's like,
And then go, this is dumb.
It's just
This is a dumb
it's just
movie.
2 people that just jokes off over
Spiders,
spiders for
what
some
are they?
reason. Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
why do they care about spiders? Who gives a shit? You know, move on. I think. But no, I thought it was great.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up? Because we are short on time now.
Oh yeah. No, I got nothing.
Caleb, you start the rating.
Oh, I don't really have one. It's one of those movies that I have to watch.
Is it
again.
like The Lighthouse?
Just sort of, well, yeah, exactly. I
Nah.
was going to talk about that before. It's one of those abstract films where it's so confusing to me that I don't know what to think.
Okay.
And
Fuck,
this
The Lighthouse is so good,
discussion has
bro.
been insightful, so I definitely will rewatch it and form an opinion. But as of right now, I don't have.
You should also rewatch The Lighthouse.
Yes, please. I love. We're watching that together again. Dude, I love The Lighthouse so
Was
much.
the other one you great Edgar Wright's movie, Last Night in Soho?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
but-
I wanted to
Last Night in
rewatch that
Soho,
in theaters,
no.
but then I forgot.
Yeah,
And then-
right.
Yeah.
Was
I
that
want to
Star
rewatch that because
Wars?
that was another example of
Oh,
maybe I was like, I don't know what to think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll start the
Yeah.
7.
Oh yeah, me. 7 as well. Yeah.
I'm giving it an 8.
Easy.
3 straight 8s today.
Oh, easy rating for you
I
then.
think this film on the rewatch could be an 8.
Yeah, I don't know.
7 for now, while I'm still trying to play my thoughts.
We'll see. Recommendation time
Anyway,
then.
yeah, that brings us to
Marlon's
next month's
month's
recommendation. And I've been watching a fair bit of this director recently. The director of the Before trilogy.
Oh, it is. Okay, so I was on the right track.
Richard Linklater.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
The director of School of Rock, one of my comfort films.
All right. Okay. I think I might know where you're going for
Yeah.
then.
So I'm going to recommend Boyhood.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of his more recent films, really unique concept in the sense that they filmed an actual kid grow up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, over I think it's 12 years.
Yeah, they just
That's
film
pretty
like
interesting.
a month every year.
Yeah.
That's sick.
So I am really looking forward to
See,
watching this.
he loves those kind of movies though, where like he actually uses time in real life
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the story of those like the Before series
But
is
that was-
over the actual time period.
It's crazy.
Yeah, almost every film of Richards I've watched so far, I've got quite strong enjoyment out of. They might not all be great films, but
Yeah.
Dazed and Confused is so enjoyable. The sequel to that, Everybody Wants Some, is awesome in the sense of just pure enjoyment. So I thought, why not?
Yeah.
Share the love.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think the Before trilogy actually might be one of the best trilogies ever
Yeah,
made.
it is.
It actually might even just be the best.
I don't think so.
I don't know what else.
I don't think so,
Dude, it's so
Lord of the
good.
Rings.
Okay, that's true. I haven't seen Lord of the Rings.
But-
This trilogy.
But the Before trilogy is, certainly one of the better trilogies.
Now, Boyhood is like
Because none of us
a
seen
movie I've
that.
wanted to watch for a while.
Have you seen Boyhood?
I have not, but it sounds intriguing, and I
Yeah.
might have to watch it with Isaac.
Watch it with
Mm.
Isaac. Yeah.
But anyway, that's that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, well, first of all, thank you so much, Caleb, for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I did feel like a conversation in this format was inevitable between us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for the invite. I do appreciate it. It's always
You've been
fun to
great.
talk movies with like-minded individuals.
Yeah.
So
You've
cheers.
been a great
Thank
guest.
you.
So appreciate it. And yeah, go. I mean, obviously, Caleb has a lot more subs than us anyway. But
Yeah.
go to
Yeah, I'll see.
go to Caleb's channel. have
If
a-
anyone has found any value out of what I said, just follow me on Letterboxd, follow me on Twitter, and obviously the YouTube channel,
Yeah.
Critic, Kebab.
Yeah.
We'll be linking all that shit in the description. So
Hopefully some more movie reviews coming soon.
Trust me, there will be more.
That's good to hear.
And the next episode for us might be a little bit earlier because we have to record it
Yeah.
a couple weeks early.
Yeah.
So you might get an episode quicker. We're going to be watching Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse as well as a little cheeky
Yeah.
preview.
And
that's
we're
good.
still sort of undecided on the other
Yeah.
Other one, but
released films.
yeah.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
do a poll.
Surprise.
Yeah.
10 people participate in the poll.
3 of them are us.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Thanks
that's.
for listening.
Thanks everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.